Welcome back, everybody. So hopefully you've got all of your reference images up and they're in a good spot, because now I'm going to talk about the fundamentals of making a 3D curve. And we've got a lot of options. We've kind of already played around with making some curves, but let's try to make some that we can use to make the legs of this chair. And first thing I'm going to do is, well, I'm going to expand my Rhino. I'm going to move these up a little bit because I'm going to be focusing mainly on these two viewports. Another thing I want to do is, let's see, over in the Layers tab, it looks like I need to move my reference images into my chair folder. But I'm also going to make a layer that just is reference geometry. And then I'm also going to make a new layer, create new sublayer. And that's going to be, I'm going to do one for the back leg. And then I'm going to do one for the front leg. And the reason I'm trying to break these up is because there can be a lot of information just ending up in this workspace. And sometimes I might need to turn them off. It's just very helpful to do that. And then I'm going to move this reference geometry into, no, not into that layer, into the chair layer as a sublayer. Let's see, I just want to move this up. There we go. So I'm going to just start working in the back layer. And when it comes to curves, look at all of these different options. We're going to keep it simple right now, and we're probably either going to do an interpolate point or control points. Now, when working in a 3D space, it's important to familiarize yourself is to just lay down foundational points, right? And then we can make a curve from those points and connect the dots, essentially. And this is kind of a good practice to start with because we're essentially starting with floating references. These images are, stuck to the coordinate plane, but we're going to move these points around because you see this nice back leg here is all the way in the back. It's not really touching any other references. So what we can do is we can start placing points, and then we can move those points using Gumball. And then, if we need to adjust those points, we can. So why don't we do that? And in points, we've got a whole lot of options, but we're just going to do single point. And, I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to click the end right here. I'm going to zoom back out. And now, when you're doing this, key points are essentially where things or objects intersect, because we know at that point, that's a special point. We know something's going to happen there. We don't really know exactly what yet, but we know that at that point, it's just important, and it's probably a good idea to add a point there. So, for example, here, I know that there's going to be some intersection because this bar is coming across. And right now, I'm working in wherever I put my side view image, which for me is the front panel. If you placed it somewhere else, that's quite all right. I'm going to hit Enter to initiate the point command, and I'm going to put a point there. And I'm going to put a point maybe right here because it looks like there might be an important curve there. And then I'm going to put a point right here, just for now. And that's my back leg. Now for my front leg, I'm going to come back, make sure I work in my front leg. And I'm going to, again, add a point all the way down here. Point roughly there. And you notice I'm adding my points right in the center, right? If I were to move them offset, then if I try to extrude something along these curves or make a surface, that curve might follow the line I'm trying to make and not necessarily be in the right location. Now here, there's like clearly an intersection between this leg and the seat. And I'm going to try to click wherever I think the center of that intersection would be. Okay. So now what I can do is I can move these. I've got my gumball on. Let's select that point. And right now, sometimes this tab will come up because it's asking me point or surface. And I'm actually going to hit none right now because what I want to do is I'm going to come up to my layers panel. I'm going to lock that, meaning I don't want to select these images because my focus is on these points right now. So I'm going to select that point, and I'm actually going to hide my back leg points so I don't get confused or anything. And I'm just going to click that arrow, move it to where I think the center of that intersection is, because that is the front. And again, move this point, and I'm going to move this point. And the nice thing is our images have lined up really nicely, so they should line up. If for whatever reason your points don't line up when you move them out, then you might have to scale an image, or you might have to reposition the reference image. But just be aware of that. And you can see now I've got these points floating in space. And I'm going to bring this back up. And I'm going to do the same thing for the back leg and hide those points. Now you notice I didn't bring, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, I didn't bring those points of this front leg to this side. And you can see this is a very symmetric chair. And we can, again, we want to make things easy for ourselves. Why do we have to work harder? We can mirror those points, right? Because this is a symmetric chair. And so we want to mirror them so we make sure everything is even as well. If I were to move those points by hand, they might not be even. They might be a little off. And when it comes to design and manufacturing of objects, we want them to be even unless your design specifically calls for them to be different or asymmetrical or something like that. But our goal here, we're going to adhere to the design of this chair for now and move forward with a symmetric chair. So back to the back leg, and I'm going to do that, turn those legs up, turn those points off, and then I can start moving my points for my back leg. Now it's gonna get, you're gonna have to kind of eyeball it right here. And I'm gonna move those points. And I'm gonna move this point here. And this point I'm gonna move to, I think right where that curve ends, up there, right? Now, what I can do here is I'm going to make actually another layer in here, create a new sublayer, and I'm going to call that the mirror plane. And again, you know, the reason I'm doing this is so that if I get too much geometry in there, I can just hide it. Maybe I won't, maybe I will. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my line tool, and I am going to say, okay, from the center, let's just do an intersection right here. This intersection to this intersection. Now you want to get that as close as you can. I know the image, when you zoom in, the image might be a little blurry, but that's essentially one of our reference lines. We can put it where it's in the mirror plane right now. But what I want to do next is I'm going to reference the midpoint of that line, and that big line is going to be my mirror plane. You know, I can't really reference the midpoint of this image because, as I can see, it's not exactly in the middle. And this image is clearly not symmetrical because it's got two different legs. So now I can keep this as my reference line, which is essentially kind of like, quote, our mirror plane. And I can show you what that exactly will look like because I'm going to select these points. And I can type in mirror. And start of my mirror is, of course, going to be the end point. And I can hold shift and bring it up. And you can see these points are lining up really well, which is great. And I'm going to come back here. I'm going to hide those back. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm going to hide the back leg points because I'm going to mirror these points. And type in mirror up here, or again, if I don't really like typing, I can, come on, transform, mirror, and there we go. Look at that. These are going to be sexy legs. So, I've got my points, and what I'm going to show you briefly now is essentially making these 3D curves. Now, these front legs are going to be pretty simple because right now I'm just going to do a single line because these look pretty straight. And my snaps, I can just turn all the other snaps on to turn my point snaps on. And I'm going to do the bottom and the top of those points. This point here doesn't, if I zoom in, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's connecting, which is okay. That's fine for right now. And I'm going to do the same on this side. And now I'm going to do the back leg, which is much more organic. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do interpolate points because I place those points in the center and I can know that that's the process or the sort of curve it's going to follow. And going all the way around. Boom. And I'm going to hit enter. Now I'm going to drop this down and look at this from a perspective view. And I can see that that curve is actually making somewhat of what I want. You know, right here, it's not exactly what I'm looking for. It's nice down here. It's, you know, not exactly here, especially with this curve. But that's going to be a discussion for the next video. This video is mainly about starting to add references in a three-dimensional space. All right, so I hope this helps. And you know what? Let's see what our front legs look like. Ooh, I think, where did we place our front leg geometry? Well, that's easy peasy to solve. Oh, again, hiding our straight polylines. Anyway, I will see if I can fix that. Hopefully you can see your straight curves. But I will see you in the next video. See you later.